so I'm going to do a tutorial of this kitty. This is a photo. The reference photo is by Gillian Merritt. She has some wonderful animal images, and she gives them out to use for artist references through a Facebook page. I think it's reference photos for artists, something like that. And her and a bunch of other professional photographers will post images, or if you're looking for a specific image, you can put a query and a lot of people will comment with images that you can use. So that's a great resource if animal artwork, or just where to find some reference images that you are allowed to use as an artist. So this portrait I'm going to demonstrate, not time-lapse. This is going to be a full-length video, and it will probably be broken down into parts to make it easier for you to follow along. Since Scratchboard does take some time, so I've already edited my image. If you have bought my tutorial, the image is available for you through my website on the page that's included on the little printout that comes with your Scratchboard kit. So you can download the image already sized to a 5x5 and print it off yourself to follow along or look at on your screen. So for this picture, I am going to do the eyes in color too, just to demonstrate that. And I wanted a really close-up image just so you can really follow along with the hair, how it's growing, kind of a good practice for you when you are doing an animal further away. This is going to give you the detail and the idea of how to do your strokes so that it looks realistic. So the first thing I did again was cut this out. I left a little bit on the top, so when I overlay it on my board, I'm going to have space to tape on the back. I use drafting tape or artist tape. It comes in white. You can usually find this at an artist store, but you can probably find it on Amazon as well. So I'm going to lay my picture on top, make sure it's lined up really well with my board, and then I'm just going to fold it, kind of crease the top, and then flip it over. And then I will cut my tape to size. Okay, so now that is ready to go. So I do usually transfer my image with transfer paper. I use Sorrel transfer paper. It comes in a bunch of different colors, but I find that I prefer the graphite. It shows up well on Scratchboard, but isn't overpowering. The white is way too much for me. It's very distracting if I'm trying to work. Also, if I have any remnants, it's hard to remove, whereas the graphite kind of disappears as you work, and with a kneaded eraser, if you have a mark somewhere you don't want, you can just kind of gently tap it on your board and it will tend to take away any lines you might still see from the tracing paper. So with Scratchboard, obviously if you were to sketch on the board, you're not really going to have a good way to erase it without messing up the board in some way. If you're really perfect and don't make mistakes, you can certainly draw on there yourself, but I'm a perfectionist and I want my work to look as hyper realistic as possible. So I prefer to do it this way. And again, I'm just going to be like outlining the basic lines. Sorry, I'm looking for my pencil. Here we go. Just to differentiate where you have big gradation changes, like this block of white compared to this bit of black. I'm not drawing in every hair. I might draw a few little lines just to remind me which way the hair is growing. But this is more just an outline because I'm going to be looking at my picture as to where things are actually going. So I'm going to just start along the eyes. And I don't need to push very hard. I am actually using a mechanical pencil with the lead all the way pushed in, and this has a pretty decent point on the end. You could just use a regular pencil and it just is going to leave lines on your picture. But I've used this same pencil for years, just with the lead put in. So I'm kind of just going to be going around the basic shapes. Now here on a cat, the hair always kind of draws in or grows in towards this point right here. So I like to reflect that just a little bit, so I keep in mind where my hair is going, giving myself just a few lines in this area. But overall, I'm mainly doing this basic gradation. Go around the nose. Try to keep your lines more in the gray area that you're going to scratch, because in here where you're leaving this black, you don't want your tracing line to be where it should be black. Try to keep it on where you're going to be scratching into the board. So right here, there's actually a little bit of hair. I'm not even going to draw that on. I'm just going to know when I go to work on that, that I need to bring the gradation in just slightly as it gets to this full dark value. And again, I don't want to push hard enough that I'm ripping my paper, because I do still use this picture as a reference as I work. I will kind of be able to see where I've traced over, but the easiest thing to do is after you think you've got it to a good point, to lift up your paper and your tracing paper and just kind of compare the two images, and you'll be able to see if there's any spots you missed and need to go back on later on. Also, I tend to save the tracing paper after I'm done, just in case I get to work on a certain area and I'm like having a little bit of trouble with where things should be. I might lay it back over just to draw a few extra lines for guidance. I feel like this part of the process always makes my hand cramp. I don't really get that in any other part of working on a scratchboard, but for whatever reason, again, where you're leaving the dark marks, stay kind of into the white area just a bit. And I don't even bother to put whiskers on when I'm doing tracing. Those I'm gonna just add in. I might here just because it's so thick. But usually in doing a portrait, I don't tend to add those in because I'm gonna be scratching the background fur. And whiskers are like the very last thing I add to any animal that has them. That's like the final details. So here I'm kind of just doing these bright white hairs and just kind of following how they're growing. So this part is going to look a little bit speckly because it's kind of what it looks like on this picture. Okay. Now here you see there's black whiskers. If you are extremely skilled, you can try and scratch around that. I tend to use a Faber-Castell Pitt pen, and this is an extra small, so it's a super fine tip to add that in later. It's gonna come out a lot cleaner than if you're painting it on. when you use inks on a Scratchboard, if you're painting with them, they will find all the grooves that you've scratched and kind of bleed a bit. The Pitt pens do not do that. So they're really good if you have some fine black details that you want to add in later. Again, if you're a master, you can stipple and work around it, but since we're just starting out, that's what we're gonna use. Black ink also is a good thing to have on hand. Scratchboard sells an ink kit, Scratchboard ampersand. So it comes with a black repair. Now, if you've really gouged into your picture, this isn't gonna fully cover it. You can ink back over it. Your marks will always be there. It's not going to scratch as cleanly as the fresh board. But this is great, especially even if you have a really dark animal and want to show the fur, so you're scratching the fur but want it to appear a little darker, you can come back in with the inks watered down and do a wash over top. So it's really handy. Ampersand also is a really great company. You can reach out to them and they will send you black ink. I've had a board that got damaged and they sent me a little bottle with the clay as well as the black ink so that I had to add the clay, sand it repeatedly because it's kind of like a slip. But they were great. They mailed that to me. They didn't charge me. So if you ever have a board that has like the corner damaged or something, that's a great way to repair that. And they're super helpful. If you buy the ink kit though, it does come with a few other colors. You get this light green, you get a ultramarine blue, you get a yellow, and magenta or carmine red, and then you also get this one, the sepia color. And they send you this little card, which I cut off the packet, but tells you how to get basic colors on here. So this is helpful, and I've obviously figured out ways to make additional colors by watering them down and whatnot, and I do have a bunch of additional inks, either from Golden, water-based inks. I really like these Liquitex. They have a few that are a muted color, so I've got like muted green, muted pink, muted violet, and those work nice to get some more natural tones that are hard to get using just the ampersand inks. But I used solely the ampersand inks for a long time, and they work great. I think I'm about ready to check and see where I maybe need to come back in. Again, I'm just kind of drawing basic shapes around these black areas. Obviously you have some hairs going into it, but I want to try and make sure to leave most of that black and then just gently come in. Okay, so let's check and see where we're at. See, I forgot this eye. So we have step one done and ready. So follow along for part 2 to figure out how we're going to start scratching this.